is Jerry Kroth, and I'm a psych professor in California, and this is a book that was written many, many years ago by a name Robert Ardrey, The Territorial Imperative. He really organized all the data and gave us a picture of the male in the animal kingdom and his relationship to territoriality, which had a lot of implications for human beings as well. He had a concept of proprietors and intruders. There are males in the animal kingdom. These are male lions whose job it is to secure resources and protect their borders and to scare off and defeat any possible intruders. It's a great male drama between proprietors and intruders in the animal kingdom, and it covers everybody. This is a bird with his colors who flies up from the south and secures a piece of real estate, and this is where they will nest. This is where resources are, and he makes a loud call saying, "This is my piece of real estate. Do not tread on my terrain."
This display by the male in the foreground is directed at the male in the background, a strong signal of territorial ownership. Resources at stake include food.
So our little bird flies away, intimidated by the alpha male. This is happening all over the animal kingdom. So let's look a little deeper into territoriality and its relation to sex and genes and the alpha male. Here's a study of biologists did this study. They were watching sage grouse males, cocks, 355 of them, gathered around 141 hens during mating season. They fought and fought and fought to carve out what I called stamping grounds, and then the most powerful males bred. 3/4 of all the matings were accomplished by only 4 dominant males. The other 351 didn't get much of an opportunity. So it seems to be a survival of the fittest, strongest. Those are the genes that are spread, and that is what the male seems intent on doing. And so these are 2 male elephant seals who are fighting for breeding rights. Sometimes they can be as large as 3,000 pounds, considerably larger than the female. Sometimes these fights last to the death. Now, their job is a smaller male may have maybe 10 to 12 females in his harem. A larger male could have 100. Now, there are often intruders who come to see if they can also breed, and they're scared off by the guardian proprietor male who chases them off and protects his property.
Gelada baboons. Geladas live in small family groups consisting of a breeding male plus a harem of up to 6 females and their offspring. They're also known as bleeding heart baboons because of the distinctive red heart-shaped markings on their chests.
So we have, again, male displays, male dominance, and multiple females through which the genes express themselves and get propagated. Here is another alpha male display and a female peacock, and the spreading of the genes, as it were. Now, everywhere you look, now, by the way, this is not universal, but it is predominant in the animal kingdom. The male has his resources include females as property. That's his resource, his genetic resource. And when other males come, he scares them off or attacks them. And there he goes. When we look at the human landscape, the territorial thing seems to get a bit diluted, but we can see traces of it almost all over the place. This is almost a literal trace of it. Here's King Abdul, an alpha male, and his 30 wives, and he has 35 children. So obviously, King Abdullah, who is wealthy and has resources and net worth, also seeks to breed with his harem of 30 females. This is a man in the Arab world, in this part of the world. If you have the money, you can have more wives. He has 4 wives and 40 children. This guy is attracted to male displays and uniforms and clothing, and Muammar Gaddafi had an entourage of female bodyguards. One woman wrote a book about Gaddafi and said that he was a serial rapist, and he had sex 4 to 5 times a day. But I don't know if his intent was to have children and to breed. That's another issue. But this is probably the leading alpha male in human history, Genghis Khan, who fathered 20,000 children. Okay, that's Khan's Y chromosome spreading across the earth. Approximately 8% of all males in Asia today are descendants of Genghis Khan. Now, we think of this as backward and primitive in the developed world, but actually the trailings of the territorial thing, whatever we're going to call it, only the areas in black forbid polygamy. The areas that are not in black allow it, permit it, or tolerate it. And so it's a sign of our backwardness, in a sense, that we are still involved in this process. Now, in the West, a man who captures females and holds them prisoner is a criminal. And there was a guy in Cleveland who captured 3 females, locked them in his basement for 11 years, and he was sentenced to 1,000 years in prison.
He is perhaps one of the most evil men in America. But before Ariel Castro was sent away to serve his life plus 1,000-year prison sentence, one of his victims had a chance to confront her tormentor in a packed Cleveland courtroom.
So she told him what it was like to be a prisoner. And here's another criminal, Charles Manson, and his harem of 3 females in this case. So the idea that women are your property, your resources, your breeding resources, is actually codified in law. It was called coverture. And it said in British law, the common law of marriage gives the custody of the wife's person to her husband, so that he has a right to her even against herself. And that doctrine lasted for centuries. That's straight out of the animal kingdom almost, right? So when we think of feminism and in a Darwinian timescale, it is really very, very recent. A woman could own property in the United States by herself only after 1839. A woman could wear pants in the U.S. Congress only in 1969. Even today, there are 9 million Saudi women, regardless of economic and social status, who are prohibited from studying, traveling, working, accessing government institutions, undergoing medical treatment or surgical procedures, including childbirth, without the consent of their male guardians. Just like that Siberian deer was guarding his females, we see the remnants of this territorial thing in human behavior and human anthropology. So let's take a look at some more residual effects. 78% of males have had fantasies of having sex with 3 or more women. They don't act it out, but it's still in the silt of their unconscious. If you look at males' sexual behavior in the history of their existence, the number of men who have had 21 or more sexual partners, almost 1 in 5 men have had 21 or more sexual partners. Only 3% of women make that claim. So men are still out there spreading their seed even though in the modern world they're not particularly interested in breeding. Now, another residual effect of this male territorial matter is infanticide, inclusive fitness, and the Cinderella effects. If an alpha male in the animal kingdom attacks another alpha male and takes over his harem, he's interested in spreading his genes, is he not? So what is he going to do with all those children that other alpha male had? Is he going to be a good stepfather? No, he isn't. His intent is to kill off all of the competitors' babies. Now, I censored this. Here's our alpha male, but he sees a female with a baby. And the females run away, trying to protect their infants, but his job now is to destroy all those babies and procreate all of his own. It's kind of very difficult to watch. Now, inclusive fitness is a doctrine that says the closer the genetic relationship, the more caring and nurturing you are. The further the genetic relationship, the greater the competition. So you care for your own. A bird's grandmother will nurture that baby bird like the mother will, but if further away, that nurturance falls off. Now, in the human landscape, the Cinderella effect, Cinderella was a stepchild, right? We see the same phenomena. Fathers who are stepfathers, okay, who have stepchildren, they still spend twice as much time with their own progeny as they spend with their stepchildren. There's a certain kind of bias in there, isn't there? Child abuse, that is, abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and violence, occurs 5 times more frequently with step-parents than with natural parents. The genetic relationship is further, the abuse grows. Children who are murdered are 40 to 100 times more likely to be killed by a step-parent than by a natural parent. So the biological inclusive fitness is governing that, and in the same way that you see these things in the animal kingdom, but with certainly a little less violence. They don't kill off their babies quite as much. Now, some guy, I think it was Lionel Tiger, maybe it was Robert Ardrey, called it the territorial male biogram. I liked that term. It's like the script for males. And it's the question is it genetic? And some studies have pointed out it is genetic, but it's not one gene. It's a group of genes. But it's a script that males, whether they're wasps or birds or Siberian deer, seem to follow. Now, let's talk the second issue here. I have 5 issues I'm going to bring up. The second one is the role of testosterone in all of this male territoriality.
There is no way you can deny me.
So, boys, prior to puberty, have relatively high voices, okay? And then something happens. Now, sometimes YouTube doesn't allow you to show copyrighted songs, so I thought I would just be prepared and illustrate this same thing again. But before we get there, a statistic. After puberty, men produce 10 times more testosterone than women. By adulthood, men weigh 15% more than women and are generally 6 inches taller. Something happens at puberty. Now here's
So you boss more people around?
You think that's all we do at CAP is boss people around?
Basically, yeah.
And after puberty, those voices change and become deep.
How sweet the sound.
All right, so there's a lot to talk about when we talk about the role of testosterone. Kingdom.
Powerful. At the same time, one of the most mysterious hormones we know about. All mammals, and indeed many other species, have testosterone. It does one thing, and one thing only. It causes males to be able to reproduce. But in that simple sentence lies great complexity. Because in order to reproduce, you have not only to be fertile, you have to be sexy, you have to be competitive, you have to be aggressive, you have to be attractive. And all these things, testosterone plays a major role. And that means it has lots of other things it does as well, like male bonding, because males have a function in society, which is to protect society, to protect their group, to defend it against enemies, particularly for young men. Therefore, testosterone makes men like taking risks, like having thrills. And so, testosterone is found not only in reproduction, but in all aspects of society, including the way we behave, the way we organize ourselves, where we fight wars, why we have street gangs. But it also enables him to carry out the sorts of behavior which are essential for successful reproduction, like the sense of competing with other males, the desire to win, the ability to combine with other males to form cohesive groups which both defend society and, of course, assault and attack other societies. Much of modern human society is devoted to controlling testosterone. So we have laws and customs and religion which regulate and channel the way testosterone is expressed in our society.
The higher level of testosterone, the higher the dominance, the higher the rank, and the greater the mating behavior in primates. Now, if you look at testosterone in humans, it's very interesting. This is not quite human yet. Here's a mouse, and you can see biting attacks, which is ascending. The level of biting attacks goes up. Then they castrate the mouse, and you see the level of aggressive biting attacks go almost to zero. Then they inject this mouse with testosterone, and his biting and aggressive behavior returns to almost normal, even though he's castrated. So testosterone has a close relationship with aggression and anger and competitiveness. If you look at the distribution of testosterone with age, you see it reaches a peak between 15 and 20 for the man and then gradually tapers off. Now, if you plot that against violent crime, you're absolutely astonished. Look at that. I mean, it's almost as if violent crime, graph on the bottom, is perfectly correlated with the level of testosterone in a male. Now, criminologists say, hey, it's not that simple, but it certainly is an important correlate. Now, it is related to crime in many, many respects. For example, all homicides in the United States, 90% of all homicides are committed by males. And of those, remember, the two elephant seals are fighting. What are they fighting over? Access to the female, access to resources. 78% of all homicides in the United States are males killing other males, just like our elephant seals and our deer and our chimpanzees. Don't forget that the male biogram, the territorial biogram, has men searching for resources, which is money. And so 85% of all burglaries are committed by males. And of course, 98% of all rapes. So the territorial biogram involves aggression, strength, competition, testosterone, and loud voices. Loud, deep voices. So I wrote to this professor who did a study in Russia on these deer. Some were domesticated and some were wild, and he measured their voice pitch and their loudness. And the wild deer had deeper voices and a louder pitch. The purpose of that is twofold. First, it discourages other males, and secondly, it attracts females. Loud voice, deep voice, male displays. Here's a alligator mating season. So this alligator has been doing this for 17 million years. The deeper the voice, the more it scares off competitors, the more it attracts females. Now, that males are involved in this process of display. of their testosterone, their secondary sex characteristics. This is where I started this investigation, and I was really surprised. It was my view that men who like muscle cars and hot rods with deep exhaust sounds, who have subwoofers bouncing down the street, making loud, deep noises, that they're primitive, they're backward, that women do not get attracted to this, that this was a male fantasy, a male delusion. That's how I started this. But then I ran into empirical data that challenged that. And I'm afraid it's less of a delusion and a fantasy than it seems. So men are attracted to muscle cars that make deep, loud noises, and they often attach females to the muscle car as if you have a muscle car, as if you have muscle, you get the female, okay? And it's part of the advertising, part of the cottage industry, that the loud, deep male voice is somehow going to attract females. So this is where I was actually surprised. I saw a couple videos of men who had souped up their cars with deep, 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 dark sounds. And then they asked women to watch them. And it seemed as if in these videos, women not only liked it, but they were aroused. There are a couple others. So I thought this was maybe just a cottage industry, and these are videos that are promos and that turning your car into a muscle car and getting your subwoofers and you'll get the females. And I thought, is this really true, or is this still an extension of that male fantasy? Do women really, those women seemed like they experienced arousal. So I started looking for more solid empirical research, and this was a survey by, I think it was an insurance industry, asking women, what kind of car does a man need to drive for you to be attracted to that man? Okay, and again, this was a surprise. 32% of the women said they are attracted to a man who drives a pickup truck, and 27% were attracted to a man who drove a sports car. That's almost 60% of the sampled women who want a man who is an outdoorsman, who's masculine, who's risk-taking, who's out there in the world with his pickup truck and his flashy sports car. You would think that a woman would be attracted to a man who would be a good father, a good provider. They were asked, what if he drove a minivan? Well, 2% of women would be attracted to a man who is driving a minivan. Okay? It's not going to work. But there's a lot more empirical data here. There was another more clinical study done of the deep voice, loud voice, deep display, and they took the sound of car engines and they tested men and women with saliva samples. They measured stress in the male's saliva for cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Remember, deep, loud voices make males stressed. They're programmed to have a stress reaction. There's a competitor in the area. Women, on the other hand, are allegedly aroused by it. So they wanted to investigate that, and they started with various sounds. Then this began at a baseline with the VW Polo. We don't have that in America. It is a European car. This was a European study. And guess what? Nobody reacted to the sound of the VW Polo. Men did not experience stress, and women did not experience arousal. But for the Lamborghini and the Ferrari, both men reacted with stress and women with arousal. They didn't see these cars, they just heard them. Now, in this study, the Maserati was played. And the sound of the Maserati made 100% of the women react with arousal. So Maserati heard about this study and decided to craft a television commercial around that study. So here's just a portion of the Maserati commercial. So that's a peer-reviewed study that got a lot of publicity, isn't it? I wrote to an expert in female sexuality in Canada. She told me to write to an anthropologist at Penn State, who I will quote here. He and I had an exchange. I wanted to know, is it true that women are aroused by deep voices or loud, deep sounds? And he said, his research shows that women are attracted to men with deep voices, and attractive is not the same as aroused. That is, they are attracted to men with deep voices because of their leadership, because they exude a sense of confidence and authority. But he does not have any data that says they are aroused sexually from that. He says, on the other hand, he doesn't have any data that says that's not true. So he can't disconfirm it. So it's interesting that this is not a mere male fantasy. Here's more data on that. Men with lower voices had higher levels of testosterone. Well, that makes sense. Women favored men with lower voices. 500 women were sampled. Men felt threatened by men with lower voices. Okay, we established that earlier. A lower pitch made men attractive to women, but it especially made men seem more dominant to other men. That's David Putz, the guy I wrote to at Penn State. A second study corroborates Putz's findings that deeper male voices women react more with attraction. And also, this has surprised me, men with lower voices had more children than men with higher voices. Another one is that men who drove sexy cars, they didn't listen to them, but if they drove them, they had an increase in their level of testosterone while driving the car. Here's Barry White.
Gubernatorial.
A Motown singer.
Baby. Oh, baby. Doohickey.
I thought doohickey would have been a little higher up.
This is a very young Jon Stewart interviewing Barry White.
I don't have the slightest idea.
Yeah? Right, but you've got that enduring sound that It seems your last
I'm very fortunate.
You're very. I can't. I just want you to talk. I don't care what you say. You could order chicken McNuggets from me right now, and I'd get them and love it. Yeah.
Now, in pursuing this a little further, again, signs of testosterone, signs of body hair, muscle, facial hair. So, in a study of 8,000 women published by the New York Times, men with visible stubble or beards were preferred over clean-shaven men. Even when they were asked about a male with whom they could have children and settle down, you'd think they would take the clean-shaven guy with the minivan. But no, the more the facial hair, the better. So women are also responding to this territorial biogram with these reactions. Okay, so let's talk for a second here about Sigmund Freud. Remember, I'm a psychologist, so this is Freud's iceberg, where you see at the conscious level it's white, but most of our behavior is unconscious. So we don't know why we want a muscle car, we just want a muscle car. It's an instinctive reaction. Jung had a very similar idea. The area in orange is unconscious, and the area in gray is small but conscious. Let's go back to Freud's iceberg without all those fancy terms, okay? And look at this from that perspective. From the conscious perspective, our 21st century image of a male is that he is, or he should be, monogamous, caring, empathic, believing in equal rights, gender equality, sharing in child rearing, a good husband, a good partner, a good father. Okay? That's our image of a decent gentleman. Okay? But on the darker side, in the shadow, in the underside of this, there's the male as territorial, as dominant, seeking multiple sexual partners, seeing women as objects and property, involved in sex, power, aggression, competition, then the will to win. These are the traits of that residual but diluted male territorial biogram. Now, the guy on top probably drives a minivan, and the guy on the bottom either drives a Hummer or wants to drive a Hummer. Now, again, in the human landscape, we have a distorted, diluted territorial biogram. The deer wants females to breed. The modern 21st century male promiscuous is not out there to breed. He's out there to dominate or involved in eroticism. But when the instinctive side of him talks, the message is one is not enough. And when a man acts out on that, it's reprehensible, it's embarrassing, it's socially unacceptable, it's compromising, it's often illegal, it involves apologies, it involves disgrace. Okay? So Anthony Weiner was a brilliant congressman, but he had this need to show off his private part, and he had to resign. This man we know was married, but he similarly wanted something more. Elliot Spitzer, brilliant prosecutor in New York, was caught with a prostitute and resigned in disgrace. Then, of course, we have this guy and this guy in the tabloids. But again, these men are not trying to breed with these women, are they? It's a question of dominance. It's a question of eroticism. But it's not a literal translation of the male territorial biogram. It is a dilution of it. Okay? So let's go to our third topic here, which is territoriality displays plumage and blood kinship. Another concept. People who are birds who have the same coloring hang out together. They take care of each other. Genetic connection. The closer the genetic lineage, the greater the protection and the greater the nurturance. Now, when we talk about males and kinship, when we see a flag is a symbol of territory. Canada, Mexico, the United Kingdom. And that flag represents a number of symbolic things. First of all, it's a territory. It is a piece of real estate. Okay. Secondly, it represents kinship. According to psychohistorian Lloyd de Maus, a flag represents blood kinship. The English have the same similar genetic background, food, culture, language, and territory. But another thing to remember about a flag is that it's generally colored red. Of all the colors of the world's flags, red is the most predominant color. Brown occurs 7% of the time. Why? Blood, red. That's the key. That this territory has been earned by the sacrifice of other alpha males who have given their lives and spilled their blood for this territory. Okay? And it is therefore sacred. It represents the blood of the martyrs who have fought to the death in order to secure this property for all the rest of us. So flag desecration, or desecration of national anthems, is generally forbidden. It is often illegal. Some countries punish it by death. So the flag represents an awful lot, but mainly territory and the blood of the martyr alpha males who have sacrificed themselves to secure this territory for all of the rest of us proprietors against all those intruders. Book by Lionel Tiger, an anthropologist, called Men in Groups. And this is a brilliant book, and he calls Homo sapiens the planet's greatest predator. And he does so because we may not be that strong, but our cognitive capacities allow for a very elaborate social organization, which allows men to gather in groups and hunt in hunting bands and bring down the greatest game. Outside of the mosquito, we are the greatest predator on Earth and the most successful, primarily because of our social organization. Men in groups in hunting bands. Now, chimpanzees can also fight and hunt in groups, but Homo sapien males seem to do it best. Now, the character of the male social group is bonding. If there's a band of people, a platoon, an army, a hunting band, and one person is a defector or a coward, then the entire group is threatened by the absence of one of the constituent parts. So loyalty and cooperative enterprise are essential. Semper fidelis, always loyal. Defectors and cowards are generally punished throughout human society. And the loyal band is sometimes more important than family. In the Mafia, Marlon Brando says, "Don't tell me what they said about me. Tell me why they were so comfortable to say it around you." Meaning, your loyalty might be questionable, and that's very, very important. So the brotherhood of males involves secrecy, it involves tattoos, initiation rites, loyalty to the group above all. That's a prison gang that you see. And in modern terms, it's often street gangs, but the history of human gangs goes all the way back to the very beginnings. This is a Russian mafiosi with the Godfather, but we have establishment male gangs as well. Now, males form secret brotherhoods with symbols, initiation rites, rites of passage. In early times, the young boy had to go out and kill something in order to prove his manhood so that he could join the fraternity, the fratriarchy, or established symbolic traditions like bar mitzvah and confirmation do the same thing. These are rites of passage for boys to become men and then to join their secret societies, like the Freemasons, the Mafia, the Knights Templar, the Black Hand, the Bohemia Club in California, the Illuminati, Skull and Bones. George Bush was a member. The tattoos and symbols are often territorial, like that upper left shows you the tattoo for the Glendale Gang of Arizona. This Aryan Brotherhood prison gang comes from California. This guy is a member of the Bloods in Los Angeles, and Piru is tattooed on his chest. Piru is named after a street in Los Angeles. So many of these things are extremely territorial. Now watch this little video about gulls because it has something to do with gangs.
Greater black-backed and herring gulls breed on Appledore Island off the New England coast. Here the gulls court, mate, nest, and fledge young, all in 3 short months. But these two species are both predators, eating anything they can catch, kill, and tear apart, including other gulls. How can thousands of birds, each a potential predator on the eggs and chicks of their neighbors, coexist on a 95-acre island? The gulls use these signals to carve out and hold small territories spaced just 4 to 5 meters apart across the rocky island.
While these animals carve out territories which they defend with their lives, this is a map of Los Angeles, and this is the territories carved out by the gangs of Los Angeles, the Venice Crips, the Graveyard Crips, the Bloods, up to 10,000 males who are involved in this.
Gun, straight bullets get tossed around, people get hit. I'm a Crip. If anybody step into my vicinity, I'm going at you to the fullest extent.
I'm the Crip right here. Everybody.
This notorious gang is known for its flashy lifestyle and violent ways.
You come around over here, we gonna tear your head off.
Remember that male gangs, generally in the animal kingdom, are there to secure breeding rights and resources. So what are the gangs in Los Angeles doing? Well, they're securing resources generally through extortion and through the drug trade. In the animal kingdom, we have two really major forces of... Now, there are matriarchies, but when we talk about the male thing, the biogram, there are two major forms of governance. One is the domination by a single dominant male ruler, and the second is the governance by a coalition of dominant males. Okay? Now, if you look at... there are some lions who are there often to protect the supreme alpha leader with a coalition of subdominant males. Now, if you look at human society, and we forget about our political lexicon, it's amazing how human societies are dominated by those same two forms of governments. First, dominant single male rulers, kings, czars, caliphs, dictators, tyrants, okay? Ferocity and fierceness is their legacy. But there are also more secular types, strongmen and dictators who rule with an iron hand. This is the rule by the single dominant male, alpha male. Now, there is also a thought that if we take away our political lenses for a second, we have governance, but a democracy generally, empirically, is a government of a coalition of dominant males. If you look at the United States Congress for the last 200 years, the red represents males. So the United States may call itself a democracy, but it really is a government led by dominant males. And if you look at the Senate for 200 years, the blue is women, okay? But you can see, if you're just an empiricist here, that America is governed by dominant males. And if we were to look at their ethnicity, it is a government ruled by dominant white males for the last 200 years. Susan B. Anthony tried to vote and was put in prison. So it's not merely an American phenomena. Males govern, 75% of France is governed by dominant males. Hungary, 90%. Japan, 90%. Turkey, 85%. So dominant males in the animal kingdom control resources. And in the human world, that means net worth, that they're wealthy. So a congressman for example, compared to the average American, is 73 times more powerful or dominant than the average American person. And the senator is 205 times more powerful because that's how much wealth they have. So when we talk about our senators and congressmen, we really are talking about dominant males who control resources. These 8 dominant males have as much wealth as half the planet Earth. And by the way, most of those guys are Americans. At demonstrations, they tend to be highly populated by men.
Really dramatic scenes, and I've put on my flak jacket because you can see we now have some serious clashes.
All right. That being said, our last subject here on territoriality is the role of sport and ritual. The territorial imperative is kind of symbolically acted out in sports, and it's very instructive what sports tells us. The word in Latin, the term fan, it means fanatic, from fanaticus. It means a person who is somewhat insane and divinely inspired, in a frenzy, fanaticus, a fanatic. Now, in ancient times, sport was a life and death event held in a coliseum where people watched someone fight to the death. Hemingway wrote a book on bullfighting in which he said bullfighting is an ancient sport because someone dies in that arena. But in sports, we have substituted or sublimated victory and defeat for life and death. So we don't have people dying in sporting contests, but we do have bands of males fighting over territory in our major sports. Now, there are female sports, yes, but we're talking about the major historical legacy here, which is bands of males fighting other bands of males for yardage, regardless of the sport. A band of males groups together and fights for a victory of placing an object into a female receptacle. That seems to be the goal. There it is in hockey. You shoot an object into something that catches it. There's a very sexual nature to subconscious objective of sporting events. Now, there was a man who wrote a book, believe it or not, called Sperm Wars. And he said there are many species where the female copulates with multiple males. And in the vaginal tract of that animal, sperm differentiate into groups of one male fighting off groups of another male so that one will get through and score and fertilize the ovum. Now, that sounds preposterous, but it's actually true. The reproductive tract inside a female chimpanzee, quote, this is from Sperm Wars, becomes the battleground for a sperm war that takes place over the course of several days. Only one sperm among all of the billions within her vaginal tract and uterus can win the prize of fertilizing the egg. In fact, only a very small percentage of sperm, possibly as little as 1%, are even capable of fertilization. The rest, the other 99% of sperm, consists of what are called blockers, or kamikaze sperm. Their function is to prevent the sperm of the other males from reaching the egg. Here's a video of that.
We took the view that maybe these have a role, and it struck us that what they could well be doing in sperm competition, instead of trying to fertilize eggs themselves, is to try and stop other male sperm from fertilizing eggs, either by just getting in their way, blocking passages through the cervical mucus, wrapping themselves around them, or doing something much more dynamic and exciting, like roaming around trying to kill the sperm from other males. And so, because that's kamikaze-type behavior,
Now, the word epiphenomena, which is part of the title of my book, is that one level is reflected or mirrored in another level. When you look at cellular level of sperm and you look at sports, sports is kind of like acting out what is going on at a cellular level. And sports is also an epiphenomena of what's going on in the real world. I mean, between the Kurds and ISIS, there are two bands of males in the real world fighting over territory. And you see that in sports, and you see that down there in this vaginal tract of the.
And this is because in most species, a female will mate with multiple males. And therefore, within a female reproductive tract, there can be, for example, sperm from multiple males directly competing in literally the race to the egg.
If you look now, the proprietor sperm are fighting the intruder sperm, and only one gets through to fertilize the egg. That's what's kind of happening in sports. You have a band of males, but only one male gets through. There's only one male that gets through to make the score. In football, it's the same story. Only one gets through and penetrates the barriers of the proprietors or the intruders. The same is true in soccer or European football and in hockey. There's only one scorer. Now, when that scorer makes a point, there's a kind of an orgasmic cry of victory.
Näissä tilanteissa Heinemann, jos itse olisin coach, niin laittaisin hänet ilman muuta juuri näissä tilanteissa. Koko vasta aloituksessa, siinä on Kaapolla paikka. Nyt muuten lähdetään hakemaan. Kaapo! Yes!
Barrera again, he puts it across, it's a no-goal goal. Mexico!
Viva Mexico. So the fans, in the meantime, who are watching this symbolic ritual acted out, our fanatics are in a state of frenzy. They're waving their territorial flags from their particular country or city or town or college stadium. They have all sorts of symbols that signify this territoriality, and they get worked up into a state. Robert Ardrey makes a very interesting point about, we're going to get back to sports in just a second, but he talks about Pearl Harbor and the inspired lunacy of the proprietor. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, a lot of college students thought they were against war, that war was not a way to solve problems, and then suddenly when Pearl Harbor was bombed, everybody forgot their intellectual ideas, and the inspired lunacy of the proprietor had occurred. The intruder had not. And they didn't have to draft many people in World War II. They just dropped out of college and went right to the draft board and volunteered to fight for their land or their country. America had been attacked. So there was one experiment done by a biologist who took a fish, put it in an aquarium with some rocks, and that fish developed a sense of territoriality over that spot. Then the guy dropped in other fish. Well, this proprietor fish attacked the intruders. And even when he dropped in bigger fish, the proprietor attacked every kind of fish that came close to his homeland. And the intruder fish lost 4 times as often as the proprietor fish. Here's a little blue fish attacking anything that comes by his home. There he goes. This little fish here attacks a human being who comes near his nest. So proprietors are really quite strong and ferocious and full of frenzy and fury. Home teams in sports, in Major League Soccer, win 69% of the time against the intruder visiting team. Home teams in the NBA win 62% of the time. This is data collected over decades. Okay? Home teams in the National Hockey League win 59% of the time against the visiting team. In football, the home team wins 58% of the time. Okay? In baseball, the home team wins 54% of the time. Now, an enterprising researcher said, I'll bet you the testosterone of the home team is higher than the testosterone of the visiting team. So he measured the testosterone level of the home team before the game and the visiting team. Who do you think had higher testosterone levels? The home team has higher testosterone levels before the game. So this is a very interesting observation that comes from the animal kingdom about protecting the homeland. All right, a very, very important concept. Okay, so let's summarize here. We've talked about the male territorial biogram. We have males in the animal kingdom fighting and fighting all along the evolutionary ladder for two major purposes: for resources and real estate, and for breeding rights, so that the strongest and fittest male breeds, populates the tribe or the species with those genes. And we see this too. This testosterone-laden alpha male has two functions across the animal kingdom. First, to scare off other competing males and to attract the female. Now, in the human landscape, the territorial imperative or biogram has been seriously diluted. It's weakened, or let's put it this way, buttoned up. All right, so there are the social, either the male suppresses himself or the social order makes it reprehensible for males to engage in this kind of dominating behavior, promiscuous behavior. So polygamy and murdering other males and robbery are generally illegal in the modern world that we live in. Nonetheless, there are still signs or trailings of the territorial biogram. Men still fight and compete with one another. They are still primarily responsible for most of all violent crimes and burglaries, and men continue to be interested in display of the alpha male resources, power, testosterone, wealth, from mega mansions to muscle cars. Now, there's another element here, a trailing. Men do not seek to have multiple females to breed with, except in very small segments of the planet today. But men continue to have fantasies of being surrounded by multiple females, if not in reality, then in the literature they read. Playboy magazine, there's Hugh Hefner for you. So there is a large segment of the male community that still has the shadow of the territorial biogram. Now, we see and reenact all of this drama out in sports, where bands of males gather against other bands of males for yardage, to place an object in a female receptacle, in which fans who are fanatics watch and vicariously participate in these territorial victories of one band of males, of proprietors, against another band of intruders. Human males often aggregate in groups, originally as part of the collective hunt for resources and game. But in the modern world, they may be bands of tattooed males in urban street gangs involved in extortion and drugs, or they may be establishment males who secure resources through legal means by providing tax breaks for themselves. Most governance territory on planet Earth is carried forth either by single dominant males, despots, dictators, or monarchs, or by coalitions of powerful, wealthy, dominant males in parliamentary democracies. So this completes our tour of territoriality and comes from my book, The Psychic Immune System. And those are the page numbers where this research comes from. Now, I did a talk here, an original talk on this called Chaos, Violence, War, and Barbarism, Why Humanity and Peace Will Prevail. It was about whether or not we have a psychic immune system that operates as a reflection of our physical immune system and that protects humanity from our violence, our impulsivity, our tendency to go to war, and that it does to our psychopathology what the physical immune system does to pathology, germs, viruses. So this was the second lecture. There were a number of constituents in the psychic immune system, 11 of them altogether, and one was territoriality and competition. So this is the dark side of the human condition, true. But territoriality is related to human survival, and that's why it's part of this book. Now, let us go on to our final topic. We could take this discussion to a lot of different places. Women, sexism, feminism, women in the military, women women who've given their lives to their country, women in sports, the LGBTQ issues. All of those things are derivatives of this discussion. I wanted to take this to the current situation with the President of the United States and look and see if we can draw out any important inferences. I think there are three that are worth talking about. So let's first of all talk about alpha male symbols of dominance and Donald Trump. The word Trump in English basically means to outwit, to defeat, to destroy your enemy. You trumped your enemy. You have a trump card which defeats all the other cards. It's almost as if Trump is living up to his name because it's a name that signifies a male dominance, or it signifies dominance. Now, there are other things. When an animal, like a dog, has a territory he defines, he leaves a urine signature, a scent. Wolves do the same thing. They leave their signature on their territory. Trump is a real estate developer. How much more territorial can you get? So he builds these phallic towers and always puts his name on them, and he makes an ostentatious display of wealth and power, testosterone, and resources. His name is everywhere, and he likes it that way. That is a part of his MO, his alpha male MO, my signature, my name, and my power. Now, he also has, remember, alpha males, the stronger you are, the more females you have. And that is also a symbol of dominance in alpha male issues. Here is Donald Trump as a young man on Playboy magazine, the desirable icon of women. Donald Trump's wives, he's had 3 of them, were kind of like trophy wives. They were all like supermodels, and to other males, dazzling trophies. I'm sure that's not necessarily what they meant to him, but they were women who would signify to other men that this is a powerful male. Okay, if you look at elephant seals, to return, the more powerful the elephant seal, the more females he has. We had one literal example of that translating into the human condition. That is King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia and his entourage of 30 wives and 35 children. He breeds with these females, and that's what elephant seals do. But also remember that Saudi Arabia is named after an alpha male, to the Saud family. It's kind of like Trump naming a state after himself. Now, Donald Trump does not breed with these females, but he owns the Miss Universe contest. So that's an interesting choice of investments. But from the point of view of male territoriality, the male who has more females is more powerful, right? So here is a man who actually owns the venue for the most beautiful women on the planet, Miss Universe contest. Okay, so there he is photographed with. He does not sleep with these women that we know of. He does not breed with these women. Okay, but he does give that impression of being the alpha male with all of the most important, valuable females. Now, men who see all these things have actually an unconscious appreciation for them. Men like Donald Trump more than they liked Barack Obama and more than they liked Bill Clinton. They may like Donald Trump against themselves, but I don't know, but whether this is an unconscious envy or not, but men do appreciate these symbols of power and male dominance. Women, on the other hand, have exactly the opposite reaction. 47% of women like to see Donald Trump impeached. Only 32% of men want to see Donald Trump impeached. So that's a very important gender gap that is worth taking note of. Now, our second concept or inference we're drawing out here is that the territorial biogram, the proprietor patrols borders and protects against intruders. That is his main function. So there's a wall that separates the proprietor from the intruder, and that is a very important wall to Donald Trump.
That know more about the border than anybody. How important is the wall? And they tell me it is absolutely vital. It's an important tool. It's maybe the most important tool that they can think of. We're going to build the wall. We have no choice. We have no choice. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall.
A cheerleader. If you looked at Donald Trump's political platform, whatever that might be, it is extremely territorial. It has to do with the proprietor. The first is, we're going to build a wall to keep out Mexicans and intruders, criminals, drug smugglers, and rapists. That's his iconic political position. However, the Muslim ban, the travel ban, is also a proprietor platform. We're keeping out Muslim intruders from our homeland. Okay? The idea that we are going to have to deport the intruders who have penetrated our borders and remove them, he's aggressively pursuing that as another one of his policies. The second thing is to stop the desecration of the symbols of the motherland, which is the national anthem and the flag. That's another extremely territorial political position. You could see Donald Trump's politics from the prism of male territoriality quite easily. There's another one called Trump's tax reform plan, and I'm sure you will say, what in God's name does tax reform have to do with territoriality? Well, give me 1 second here. Okay, if you look at lions, chimps, monkeys, other forms of dominant male coalitions, often the super alpha male is protected by a clan, a group of thugs called subdominant males, which Lionel Tiger called the Baboons Society, a gang of thugs. So the idea that governance in the animal kingdom has an alpha male surrounded by subdominant males is very frequent. Now, if this is his original tax proposal, I don't know what's going to be passed, but the original tax proposal was that 80% of the tax rebate would go to the top 1% wage earners. Okay, what's that have to do with territoriality? Well, the top 1% of wage earners are males. Some people estimate that it is 98% males who earn the top 1% salaries. Others say it's 88%, 12% women. So between 88 and 98% of the people who will get the tax break are the most dominant males in American society, the wealthiest, meaning most dominant males in American society. Okay? That means the most dominant males will get a check in this first proposal for $1 million a year. So that is what Donald Trump is offering the most dominant males in American society. So that means he will get support and protection from the most dominant males in American society. It's very territorial if you think about it. Now, Trump is actually touching a proprietary nerve, even though the media is very much against Trump. A poll by Rasmussen shows that a majority of middle-class Americans support his travel ban on Muslims or people from Muslim countries. 50% support the ban. Americans do oppose building a wall. There's no majority there. But a majority are seriously worried about illegal immigration, 60%. So when he talks about illegal immigration, he's touching a responsive nerve. A majority of Americans, this you would not notice from newspaper accounts, but a majority of Americans, 64%, say one should stand and show respect for the national anthem. Okay, so the third inference I want to bring out from discussing Trump is that Donald Trump seems to be an alpha male who's aching for a fight. Is that true? Alpha males broadcast their power and their deep, low voice for two reasons: to intimidate other males and prevent aggression, from those seagulls to the Siberian deer. So is he actually trying to start a fight, or is he trying to prevent a fight, but with all of his bravado? That's a question I can't answer, but let's at least talk about how he berates and belittles his intruder opponents. He calls North Korea's leader Rocket Man, and then Little Rocket Man, and then he debates Marco Rubio and calls him Little Marco, this little guy. He says, fire and fury will be unleashed if you attack us. And he also says, no, he doesn't seem to be interested in peace. He doesn't want to negotiate with North Korea. Here's a sampling of that.
Rocket Man should have been handled a long time ago. Little Rocket Man.
Don't worry about it, little Marco. I will.
All right, well, let's hear Big Don. Donald.
Don't worry about it, Don't worry about it, little Marco.
This little guy has lied so much about my record.
Here we go.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
Now, there was a secret channel opened up to discuss things with North Korea. Trump found out about it and said, stop. It's a waste of time to negotiate with North Korea. So he does seem to be aching for a fight. Now, this is an issue I'd like to turn to more seriously and more globally. If it's true that Trump wants to light a fuse, let's discuss where that fuse could be lit. This is a picture of the 150 countries where the United States has military presence. Now, we don't think of ourselves as having an empire, but a lot of scholars do, and they think it's the largest empire ever to have existed on planet Earth, bigger than the Ottoman Empire by a long shot. Now, if you look at the globe from that perspective, the United States has over 1,000 military bases overseas. Russia has one. China is building one. We have 1,000. Okay, we have our tentacles across this planet. Now, if you look at where we're having wars, we are killing people in Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria, Chad, Somalia, Sudan, Niger, Libya. We just killed 17 people there in August of 2017. So we're involved with military conflicts. And the question is this going to diminish or increase with our dominant alpha male in office? Let's take a look at the hot spots. Cuba, we have Trump is worried about something going on in Cuba. He's concerned about Venezuela, says something has to be done with Venezuela. In Yemen, the United States is supporting the Saudi initiative. 500,000 people have cholera there. But the Saudis don't want the Iranian-supported Houthi rebels to gain ascendancy in Yemen and control that waterway. So we're helping that problem out. It could get worse. The issues in Iraq and Syria are major. We actually have told the Syrian government that's represented at the UN they can't enter Syria. We have built a military base inside Syria, not to their liking, and we told them you cannot cross the Euphrates River into your own country unless you want to fight with us. In the Black Sea, we're rattling the Russians' cage. We built a naval base in Romania. We never would have sailed the Black Sea near Odessa during the Soviet Union's time, but we do it all the time now. And whenever the Russians get upset, we consider them aggressors. In Estonia, we built a military base 300 meters from this Russian border. Now, Trump did not do that. Obama did that. But imagine a Russian military base right across the border from El Paso, Texas, with Russian troops there. That's what we did in Estonia. In Poland, we've beefed up their brigades under Trump. We're considering sending lethal weapons to Ukraine. We're really rattling Russia's cage. Also, we're very upset with China building its little islands. We have spy flights along the Chinese border twice a day in international waters, listening to their communications. They don't like that. They would like the South China Sea to be off limits, and they're building these little islands, and we don't like that. We keep testing their will on that one. And of course, there's North Korea. There are a lot of places where violence and war could erupt, right? So far, though, there have been no takers. The alpha male has made his point, rattled the cages, talked about fire and fury, and no one has attacked us, okay? So I would like to get to a conclusion here, but I need to we're all very conditioned with political ideas that come from MSNBC, Rush Limbaugh, from left, right, and center. And to see the psychology of what's going on here, we have to sort of put our politics to the side. Let's take one example of that. Let's talk a minute about a contemporary issue, the zeitgeist. Is Trump a racist? Okay, his father may have had something to do with the Ku Klux Klan. We're not exactly sure, but it looks like he might have. Secondly, the whole behavior of Trump in Charlottesville, where we had neo-Nazis and white supremacists on one side, and he seemed to be almost sympathetic to them. Mitt Romney said, Trump, you need to apologize for your behavior at Charlottesville. Your remarks caused racists to rejoice. And then, of course, there's the issue of the national anthem. That seems to have completely gone over Trump's head. It's a black protest movement in the tradition of Martin Luther King, protesting in a peaceful way, and if you might say kneeling is a respectful way, the state of black people in the United States. But that's not how he saw that issue. So maybe Trump is a racist, okay? Let's put that aside, whether he is or it isn't. There's some of the evidence in favor of it. But if we see racism and sexism, we're not going to see this other thing. So let's put that aside just so we can get to a kernel of depth psychology here, which is important, okay? First, we looked at the alpha male's parade of dominance, his buildings, his signature, his trophy wives, how he builds walls to protect against intruders, how he seems to be aching for a fight. Now, as we work towards a conclusion, take a look at this picture. What is wrong with that picture? You look at it and say, well, there's Hillary, and people are standing behind her. There's Trump, and people are standing behind him. I don't see anything wrong. If I said something is being censored, you're seeing censorship in those pictures. So I don't see any censorship. Well, Hillary's rallies were relatively small, about 371 people during the campaign. Trump's rallies were in huge coliseums. He had thousands of people showing up for his rallies. By September of 2016, Trump had over 337,000 people attend his rallies, Clinton 13,000, 24-to-1 difference. The media spliced out something. Okay? So what is, this is a Trump rally. We rarely saw this parade of political ground swelling support, did we? So Trump actually called out the media one time, and he was actually successful doing it once.
But I want the cameras to span the room. Go ahead, fellas, watch. They don't turn them. They don't turn them. They don't turn them. Go ahead, turn them. Look, turn the camera. Go ahead. Turn the camera, ma'am. Turn the camera. You with the blonde hair, turn the camera. Show the room. Go ahead. They don't turn them. What about, hey, you in the center, why don't you turn your camera? Show them how many people come to these rallies. Turn them. Go ahead, turn them. Go ahead. Thank you. That's the first time they've ever done that. Thank you. That's the first time. Amazing. Amazing.
So I'd like to make a point about that. And this is a very paradoxical point of view for, unless you have, if you've separated your politics out of this now, this might make sense. The real danger of Trump is exactly what is being censored. Okay, what do you mean by that? Forget about left and right and who's censoring. In the Soviet Union, the old days, what was censored was the most dangerous thing to the Soviet Union. Individual rights, individual travel, artistic freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Those are the things that frightened the Soviet Union. So what is frightening American society in this censorship? Okay, that's an interesting question to put forward. Here's Carl Jung's, my mentor, psychiatrist Carl Jung, what he had to say about some of this. A group experience takes place on a lower level of consciousness than the experience of the individual. That is due to the fact that when many people gather together to share one common emotion, the total psyche emerging from the group is below the level of the individual psyche. If it is a very large group, the collective psyche will be more like the psyche of an animal. The psychology of a large crowd inevitably sinks to the level of mob psychology. Okay? Going to the level of an animal is going back to that male territorial biogram, that dog-eat-dog world of us versus them, survival of the fittest, and mob herd behavior. Now, when you light the fuse, the frenzy, the inspired lunacy of the proprietor, that little blue alpha fish protecting his homeland, it means you're inflaming and inciting a very, very archetypal, powerful emotion. And that emotion could be described as nativism, tribalism, atavism, nationalism, populism, but at its worst, it's contagion. Collective hysteria, flag waving, herd behavior, unleashed by the attack of the intruder upon the proprietor. Okay? The flag and the national anthem represent blood kinship. They represent territory. They represent all the alpha males who have died for our society. It's sacred. And to defile that arouses these dark, deep archetypal emotions.
Everyone in this arena tonight are unified by the same great American values. We're proud of our country. We respect our flag.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFLs when somebody disrespects our flag? To say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now. He's fine. He's fine.
I tried to get pictures of that crowd because it was very difficult. How big was that crowd? I thought, is it 50 people, 100 people? Sounded very loud to me. So this was his gathering. Notice that this gathering, he's standing in front of a 3-story tall American flag, wearing all the symbols of the American flag, American patriotism, red, white, and blue. Okay, talking about the national anthem, arousing the indignation, the outrage, the territoriality of the crowd, the mob, the herd. So the proprietor's duty is to protect the homeland and ensure its borders and security at all costs. Okay. So I don't want to make comparisons between Hitler and Trump. I think that's egregious, but they have two important similarities that are worth talking about. Both were extremely territorial. Evil threatens every man and every child of our great nation. We must undertake steps to ensure the safety and security of our homeland. Well, he did that, and he removed the intruders from the homeland, and that was the beginning of the Holocaust. He could inspire the lunacy of the proprietor. Now, Trump is waiting for his Pearl Harbor moment, but unfortunately it's not coming. He did not have a Pearl Harbor, no 9/11, no Gulf of Tonkin incident to set off his political platform, no North Korean attack, no Russian attack, no Iranian attack, no attacks on the homeland at all. But in the meantime, Trump is kind of teetering on the edge of collapse. 55% of the country today, this is a very recent poll, think Trump is tearing the country apart. 53% of Americans think that Trump is a bully. These are not attractive statistics. 56% believe Donald Trump is unfit to be the president of the United States. And 70% disapprove of his performance, the lowest rating in 70 years. Trump is really teetering on the edge of collapse as we speak. And this is being made in November of 2017. Okay? So he's performing a balancing act. And yet the other side of that is what happens if he does manage to provoke an attack, if he does manage to have his Pearl Harbor moment. That is where his skill set is. That is what is being censored by the media. That is what he will unleash if this happens. Okay? Welcome to mass psychology and herd behavior if the alpha male is able to provoke the intruder. Essentially, this means that our proprietor has the ability and perhaps the desire to incite the frenzy, the fire, the fury, the inspired lunacy of dominant male proprietors against all intruders. Very, very powerful emotion.
I can tell you one thing, you are protected, okay? You are protected. Nobody's going to mess with our people. Nobody is going to play games. Nobody is going to put our people in that kind of danger. USA! USA! USA!
Thanks very much for watching.